Friends, this is America Sheriff David Clark, and I'm happy to announce that Straight Talk has partnered with Blue Line Roasting Company to bring you delicious coffee to enjoy while you listen to this podcast. Blue Line Roasting Company also serves our first responders by giving a portion of all net proceeds to numerous organizations who support them. Order today at bluelineroasting.com, and don't forget, when you join the Straight Shooter VIP Club, you'll receive a free coffee sample and mug, plus invitations to private podcast events.
This administrative state is intrusive, it's obnoxious, and it's costly. I can only think of a couple of things that we even need a federal government for. You're listening to the Straight Talk podcast, hosted by me, America Sheriff David Clark. We're going to sort out this incident that happened in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee. The city of B.B. King, Beale Street, Elvis Presley, Graceland Mansion. It's a failed city right now. It's a troubled city. And it's not unlike any large urban area all across America. There are a lot of parallels and similarities with what's going on in these areas as it relates to crime and violence. And the way I want to break this thing down, this incident with Tyre Nichols, 5 Memphis police officers. Now, I should point out right away that they're presumed innocent. They've all been charged. 5 officers have been charged with murder of Tyre Nichols. They're entitled to due process and a presumption of innocence, but we can make some statements with what has been revealed out of that case. First of all, it's an anomaly between there and Minneapolis with George Floyd. Those are anomalies. And the one thing we should not do when an anomaly occurs is to make sweeping, knee-jerk changes and policy changes off of an anomaly. What really needs to happen is after people settle down emotionally, because a lot of these changes are made in an emotional state, and that's not the prudent way to make public policy change in a state of emotion. You should get some people together, gather some information, do some research, gather facts, and then figure out a way forward. What normally happens in these instances of the police use of force, the high-profile ones I'm talking about, going all the way back to Rodney King, Mike Brown, Eric Garner, New York. Mike Brown was Ferguson, Missouri. Freddie Gray in Baltimore. George Floyd, Minneapolis. Tyre Nichols now in Memphis, and Walter Gray in South Carolina. We go through this ritual every time one of these happens. And we go through the same routine. After some time goes by, people settle down, these things go away, and things go back to normal. One of the things you hear oftentimes during one of these high-profile police use of force is, oh, we have to do something. We have to do something. And I always try to remind people, no, we have to do something reasonable, not just anything. People always want to reach for police training. Police need more training. And I always say, explain that to me. Training in what? Be specific about the training. I don't think these are training issues, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think the Tyre Nichols case is a training issue. It may be a supervision issue. This street violence unit was probably not well supervised. I'm familiar with these street units. Most major agencies have one. They're targeted enforcement on violent crime, and they're sent into high crime areas to focus solely on the violence. In other words, they're not answering call for service like a regular police squad that might be going to a family trouble 1 minute, and then the next call is a barking dog, and then the next call is a stolen car. These street violence units focus on street violence, murders, aggravated assaults, non-fatal shootings, armed robberies, carjackings, sticking up suspects in those areas, field interview stops, gathering information to turn into intelligence, find out who the bad actors are, go out and look for people on felony warrants, get them off the street. And that's what they do for their tour of duty. I had one. I was the sheriff of Milwaukee County. It was called the Tactical Enforcement Unit. Targeted enforcement on violent crime. These units have to be strictly supervised, effectively supervised, or things can get out of control. Not a training issue. You don't have to train a law enforcement officer not to beat a person beyond recognition. That's what appears to have happened. I said appears in Memphis, Tennessee. Something else was going on there that we don't know about. There have been several rumors about what was really up there, and I don't want to get into rumors. But you can't use that one to affect or change public policy. And that's what people try to do. Again, police training. There's a police reform bill. They're trying to get through Congress, and it's stalled, and it should be stalled. It's a bad bill. Maybe we'll save that topic for another day. I want to stay on this issue of Memphis and the police use of force. So when we have one of these situations, the reason why nothing changes, because we work on the wrong thing. We always work on trying to change the police. For all of the time, nearly over 15 years that I was the sheriff of Milwaukee County, I resisted any further attempt to drastically change this profession of policing. It works. It keeps crime and violence in check. Is it perfect? No. Are the people involved in these units perfect? No. But you know what? They're pretty damn good. Every once in a while, you get a couple bad apples, and then we lunge for sweeping public policy changes in how we police these violent areas. So we work in the wrong thing. And what it allows people to do, mainly elected officials in these cities, these are urban areas run by Democrats. I'm not going to turn this political, but like I said, the name of this podcast is Straight Talk. And that's what you're going to get from me. So you have these politicians that enact stupid policies, housing policies, anti-poverty policies, none of which work, loosening standards on criminal behavior. So they create the conditions for crime and violence to thrive in these areas. You have a lot of people living in a densely populated area, a lot of people with no social skills. You have to have social skills to live in a densely populated area because you're sharing public spaces. So when these policies interact with some of the other urban pathologies that are going on, you have dysfunctional families, you have cultural rot, cultural dysfunction within the black underclass. I want to make it clear. What I'm speaking about here is the black underclass, not the black population as a whole. Those are good people. Middle-class blacks, take care of their kids, go to work. I'm talking about the black underclass. That's the group that's mainly responsible for a lot of this urban violence. So you have this high collection of the black underclass in these urban centers, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Chicago, LA, Washington, D.C., you name it. Memphis, Tennessee, this high concentration of the black underclass. They have to be heavily policed. Let's take a look at some of the crime going on in these major urban centers. There's a guy named John Lott. John Lott is a professor of economics, a PhD, and he heads the Crime Prevention Research Center. He has peer-reviewed studies on crime and violence and gun control, what works, what doesn't. He's a preeminent authority on this stuff, as far as I'm concerned. And recently he published a study that shows that 1% of U.S. counties are responsible for 42% of America's murders. Let that sink in. There's a study that he did. It points out that these worst 31 counties, the 1%, there are about 3,055 counties in the United States of America. So 1% would be about 31 counties. They're mainly urban centers with about 1/5 of the nation's population, only 1/5, and they alone accounted for 42% of the country's homicides. And then there's more. Lots of research shows that the worst 5% of U.S. counties accounted for 73% of all murders in the United States. 5% of the counties. Trust me, urban centers, many of the same cities and counties that I just mentioned, Cook County with Chicago, Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee, Milwaukee County with the city of Milwaukee, LA County. A total of 52% of U.S. counties reported 0 homicides. 52% of counties reported 0 homicides. Now, why is that significant? I'd be willing to bet that in those 52% of counties that reported 0 homicides, I bet they have low levels of police use of force and probably 0 police fatal use of force. Why? There's no need to. You have little police citizen interaction in those 52 counties. I'm sorry, the 52% of those counties. More police interaction that you have to have in these densely populated urban ghettos, more police interaction because it's human interaction with criminals, with criminal suspect, with the black underclass is going to lead, as a potential anyway, for conflict. Things break down. Cops try to pull somebody over, they flee. Cops try to take somebody under arrest, they resist. That's not happening in those 52% of U.S. counties that reported 0 homicides. So we got to drill down a little more into this thing other than police training. I have often said, you want to reduce the likelihood of police fatal use of force? Stop trying to fix the police and fix the ghetto. Because the 52% of counties that report 0 homicides, they're not having this problem with the police. They're not having problems with police fatal use of force. The high-profile ones that I mentioned, going back to Rodney King, happened in the mid-'80s. Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, Eric Gardner in New York, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, Tyre Nichols in Memphis. Those counties, they don't have 0 homicides. So let's dig down even a little further. Stick with Memphis. But you know what? You can take Memphis out of there, because I said that's an anomaly anyway, what happened to Tyre Nichols. That was wrong. But you could take Memphis out of there and you could put any large urban county in the United States in what I'm about to say. Anyone. And you'll find this applies to them. Memphis, Tennessee, according to this study by the 24/7 Wall Street Group, using FBI statistics, Memphis has been ranked as the most dangerous city in the United States. Has the second highest homicide rate than any U.S. metro area. Memphis, Tennessee, it's a city of about 600,000 people. City. Shelby County, probably add another 200,000 people. Listen to their homicide stats. They've had over 300 homicides for the last 4 years. 332 in 2020, 346 in 2021, dipped a little 302 in 2022. Here's something else about Memphis, Tennessee. You have a 1 in 43 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. A 1 in 43 chance. The national average is about 1 in 148 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. So you look at my chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime. Memphis, Tennessee. Chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime, 25%. In the state of Tennessee, it's a 6% chance. You know what the national average is? The chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime? 4%. Here's some more. My chance of becoming the victim of a property crime, 55% chance in Memphis, Tennessee, 1 in 18. The entire state of Tennessee, you only have a 1 in 44 chance of being the victim of a property crime. You know what the national average is? 19%. Memphis, crimes per square mile. In Memphis, crimes per square mile, 156. In Tennessee, the entire state, it's 15 crimes per square mile. The national median is 26.8, but in the city of Memphis, it's 156 crimes per square mile. Like I said, take Memphis out of that, and you can put any major urban county in America in here. And you know what those major urban counties have an overabundance of? The black underclass. So thus the need for more police and more policing. This isn't a police training issue. It's a crime issue. And so every time we have one of these high-profile police use of force, especially the fatal ones, we end up working on the wrong thing. We try to fix the police. Oh, we need police reform. Police need more training. No, they don't. The ghetto needs to be reformed. These elected officials they mask the fact that their policies, their failed policies, create the conditions for this stuff to thrive.
Follow Bulldog TV on Facebook to join the fight against communism in America. A growing community of patriots are joining together to take back the media. Bulldog TV, Americans fighting for America.
Attention, patriots. Looking for a great book? Let me recommend The Greatest Story Ever Told. The We the People Bible is available for the first time in history. This Bible is for those who believe it is time to give America back to God. Faith is being targeted, and our country's founding beliefs are being targeted. The We the People Bible is restoring what there is an attempt to remove: the preservation of faith and the preservation of America. One of the most unique features of this Bible is that it includes the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the Pledge of Allegiance as a bonus. This makes it a perfect heirloom to pass on to the generations to come. It is time to give America back to God, and this Bible is a great way to do just that. Get one for yourself and another as a gift for a friend or family member. Go to americasheriff.com and click on the Bible link to order today while supplies last. So now let's go back to the Memphis incident. This is the wrong one to use for policy change, by the way. I've said that once, but I'll say it again. Same with Minneapolis. Wrong thing to use, the wrong one to use for policy, sweeping policy changes. So the city of Memphis hires his police chief, Cerlin Davis. Remember the backdrop of this rising crime and violence. And here's another thing to think about. Areas that have high levels of murders also have high levels of other Part 1 crimes. Part 1 crimes designated by the FBI. Rapes, aggravated assaults, meaning non-fatal shooting, someone gets shot in the leg and they live. Armed robberies, those follow the murders. So this chief comes in, Cerlin Davis. I don't know why Memphis hired her. She got fired from the Atlanta Police Department for some incident. They were really scraping the bottom of the barrel. The only reason Cerlin Davis, a black female, that should be a clue. The only reason she got hired, because she checks 2 boxes on the identity politics chart. She's black and female. Like they couldn't find someone else who hadn't been fired from a large urban agency to be their chief. They were hell-bent on identity politics to place the chief. So they have a black chief. More than half of the Memphis Police Department is black. You know, this diversity push. So she comes in with this rising crime, and she comes up with this idea. She creates this Scorpion unit. That's an acronym for, I don't know this. Doesn't matter. It's called a Scorpion unit. It was one of her first major decisions when she became the city's police chief in 2021. So to deal with violent crime, there's nothing wrong with this. She creates this unit. Remember I said it's targeted enforcement. And she instructs them, go down these high crime areas and restore order. Make it livable. for the overwhelming majority of Black people who live in these areas, who are good law-abiding people. But they're living in a war zone. So she told CNN that there's been an outcry from the community among record numbers of homicides in 2021, leading to the unit. Here it is here. The acronym stands for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. That seems like a reasonable idea, a plan. We're going to go after it. We're going to target not Black people. We're going to target crime. We're going to target criminals. So these 5 officers who are now been indicted for murder were on this unit. They were part of the Scorpion unit. Like I said, I'll say it again. They have to be highly and effectively supervised. And it appears to me, from what I know of this case, and I don't know everything, they were not well supervised. So this might be a supervisory issue, but it's not a police training issue. So, of course, you have this incident, Tyre Nichols, and what's the first thing she does? She disbands the unit. To which I said, wait a minute. That's that knee-jerk emotional response. Now, here's a story here that says the Memphis Police Department said it has permanently deactivated its Scorpion unit following the death of Tyre Nichols. Here's a quote. In the process of listening intently to the family of Tyre Nichols, what about the rest of the community? Remember when I said you get some people together? Not a family who's just undergone this horrific incident. Get some more people involved. And sit down with them and do some research and take your time. So she says, in listening to the family of Tyre Nichols, she says some community leaders, it's in the best interest of all to permanently deactivate the Scorpion unit, the department said in a statement. The best interest of all? You mean including the victims of crime and the ones who are going to be further victimized because you don't have anybody targeting this violence in the city of Memphis? This is a knee-jerk reaction. So she deactivates this unit. What's she going to replace it with? You know, there's an old, it's a cowboy saying, before you tear down a fence, you better take the time to learn and understand why it was put up in the first place. She didn't do that here. This is her own creation. She said, I'm creating this unit. We're going after violence. We're going after crime, street crime. She takes it away. What are you going to put in its place if you created this to deal with the surging violence in the city? This is knee-jerk. It's just going to lead to further instances of crime and violence because you don't have anybody dealing with it anymore from a law enforcement standpoint. But this is the kind of stuff, we do it all the time. Remember the New York Police Department? They disbanded their street crimes unit under Bill de Blasio, mayor. And what happened in New York City? Crime went up. Exponentially, crime went up. Sometimes the best thing to do is maybe make a few tweaks. There's nothing wrong with that. The first question I always asked when something went wrong in my agency, where was supervision? And when you look and you peel back the layers, you find out they weren't effectively supervised. And sometimes they know it. I think these 5 Memphis police officers, I think, realized that there's not a whole lot of supervision around. Maybe we can do this. And I think you take it out in the community, disbanding the unit. All these people want a little peace and quiet in these neighborhoods. And then people wonder why things happen over and over and over. And I get tired of this too. Well, we want to make sure this never happens again. Whenever you hear somebody make that statement, run as fast as you can away from that person. What, you want to make sure that there's no police use of force? Most of these instances of police use of force are justified legally and lawfully. You want to make sure that doesn't happen again? Really, is that what you want? Or do you think that sounds convenient? It's politically expedient at the time. It sounds like, well, this person's serious. Oh, they're going to get to the bottom of this. This is never going to happen again. Yes, it's going to happen again. I don't know where, but it's going to happen again. And you know what we'll do? What we've always done. We'll go for the low-hanging fruit of police reform, of police training, of more money for social agencies to deal with this stuff, which is fine by me. I have no problem. No problem whatsoever. Want to create some social service agencies to deal with this conflict? Send them instead of the police? I got no problem with it. Oftentimes, the police are sent to stuff they don't have any business being sent to. Look at the Eric Garner case. Here's an example. Eric Garner, New York City, notorious for selling what they call Lucy cigarettes, cigarettes by the singles out of a pack, because cigarettes are so expensive. So he'd hang outside stores where people would come and buy cigarettes, and he'd sell single cigarettes. Well, that was cutting into the store owners, the bodegas and whatnot, cutting into their cigarette sales by the pack and by the cart. So they called police department. They wanted something done. They want this guy out of there. He'd been arrested for this before. Selling Lucy cigarettes. The violation is he doesn't have a tax stamp to sell cigarettes by the singles. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, failure to obtain a tax stamp to sell cigarettes is not a criminal issue. It's a regulation issue. Send regulators to deal with that. From the State Department of Revenue. Look, at businesses, they have a point. Hey, we're down here. We're working on the margins anyway, profit-wise. We want these guys out of here. It's a quality of life issue. I get that. I don't say you don't do anything. But if I was a precinct commander in New York and some business person or business association called and said, hey, we want something done. These people are selling cigarettes by the single, cutting into our profits. I'd say, okay, I get it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the New York State Department of Revenue, and we're going to get somebody on top of this. Then I'd call the State Department of Revenue supervisor, and I'd say, hey, this guy's down here, he's an annoyance to the business community down there. This guy, we've arrested him before. This isn't the way to do this. He's selling cigarettes without a tax stamp. Get some of your inspectors to go down there, and you can cite him. Give him his ticket for not having a tax stamp, and that'll be the end of it. You send the police. That's the wrong tool. Here's why it's the wrong tool. Police are going to go down there and probably make an arrest. Okay, they've arrested Eric Garner before. It doesn't matter to him. Eric Garner resisted arrest that day. Now it's on. When you resist arrest, the police have to win. Eric Garner ended up dying of a heart attack, by the way. Don't believe the lie that they choked him to death. Yeah, they put a chokehold on. That's not what killed him. That's not what the coroner's report said. Died of a heart attack. He was grossly overweight. He weighed over 300 pounds. He was in poor physical health. He had asthma and all these other things going on, diabetes. And that confrontation and that physical activity was too much for his heart, and he died of a heart attack on the way to the hospital over selling Lucy cigarettes. Well, what else were the police supposed to do? They've gone over there time and time again. Eric Garner, here's your citation for selling Lucy cigarettes, and he just blows that off, right? Freddie Gray, drug user, drug possessor, was a surge in violent crime in Baltimore City. The DA, state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, puts together this plan to go down and clean up this area that had seen a surge in violence. Complaints from the residents. Baltimore police go over there. They see Freddie Gray. Freddie Gray makes eye contact. He takes off like a bat out of hell, and the pursuit is on. Like I said, what are the cops supposed to do? Just stand and go, oh, that one got away. They chase him down, resists arrest. He ends up in a police van, and Freddie Gray ends up dying with a broken neck, but they think that he, according to a prisoner in the van with him, said he was slamming his head into the side of the van. That's the fault of the police? So the police are told, hey, go down there and clean this up. And they do. And they're pretty good at it. But because of the policies enacted by the damn politicians, you never really can eradicate it. You can only slow it down. And then you're just back there another day and another day and another day. Mike Brown, Ferguson, Missouri. You know what happened there? The guy attacked a police officer and tried to disarm him. What's the cop supposed to do? De-escalate? Look, when a law enforcement officer gives a lawful command, that is not a 50-50 proposition. When an officer gives a lawful command, there's no room for debate and dialogue and discussion. That's called a court of law. You follow the command, you go to court, and then you can debate and discuss and, address your grievances. Or file a police complaint. If you think the police officer acted officiously or did something wrong, that's the process. That's the system we have set up. That'll save your life. So again, I come back to this thing that it always happens in these high crime areas, and we always try to fix the police after it happens. Because the heavy lifting is fixing the ghetto. These damn politicians have no answers. So it's easy to just crap all over the police. Throw the police under the bus. Al Sharpton comes to town. Who's that shyster lawyer? Benjamin Crump. They can't get to these cities fast enough after one of these things happen to exploit the situation and inflame it. So again, if you don't want these things to happen again, I talked about these urban pathologies. That's where the policies come in. You have ineffective parenting. You have school failure. Those are behavioral issues. And we try to apply a technical fix. Well, police training. These are behavioral problems. You need an attitude adjustment. You need adaptive changes to deal with behavioral problems. You don't need technical fixes. We applied the wrong thing, and that's why it continues to happen and over, and then we start this ritual once again. So we'll be talking about this in future podcasts. Mark my words. You talk about race, crime, and politics. Some folks lose sleep over this, but not me, because I sleep just fine on my Giza Dream Sheets and pillow from MyPillow, especially this new 2.0. If you haven't gotten yours yet, you are missing out. Just go to mypillow.com and use promo code Clark, that's CLARKE, and save up to 66% off. The direct link is also available on my website, americasheriff.com. Get a great night's sleep so we can continue the fight. Friends, I want to thank you for listening to today's episode of Straight Talk with yours truly, America Sheriff David Clark. And a special thank you also goes out to our sponsors. My goal, as always, is to break down these complex and many times controversial issues and bring it to you straight with a little dose of common sense, no media bias, no talking points, just truth. And this podcast would not be possible without your support. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please leave a review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite place to listen. And please share this message of common sense on social media. For more content, be sure to follow me on Truth Social, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And just a reminder, we'd love for you to join our Straight Shooters VIP podcast club for only $5 per month. And with that membership, you'll receive invitations to attend private podcast events throughout the year as a VIP guest when we come to your town. Plus, if you join today, you'll also receive a free coffee mug and a sample of our private label coffee as long as supplies last. Subscribe and join at americasheriff.com. This podcast is brought to you by americasheriff.com with executive producer Judy Wilkinson of JLWilkinsonConsulting and producer Josh Wentz in partnership with our friends at Bulldog Media. If you are interested in partnering with Straight Talk Podcasts or having me speak in your area, please contact Judy at JLWilkinsonConsulting@gmail.com, 706-518-2116. That's JLWilkinsonConsulting@gmail.com. Phone number 706-518-2116. Stay tuned. Great things are coming on next week's podcast. The kids had the lowest rates of catching COVID or dying from it. Yeah, but Dr. Fauci said close the schools. The hell with Dr. Fauci. In the U.S., schools were the first to close and the last to open. That is the opposite of what the paradigm should have been.